Hi, it's Alex. We're doing another Alex James Hislop diary entry. Content. Thursday, February 21st, 2019. This one is. So that will be the Alex James Hislop diary entry content. Thursday, February 21st, 2019. The way my main spirit guides indicated. Yeah, so what is this one brought, what is this week brought us today? Basically, I created a diary entry on the 17th. And that was basically an update as to what happened, which really had to do with what happened that day. I mean, I explained a lot of different things, a lot of psychic activity that was happening, a couple other tells as well. And on the 17th, I felt like I got attacked spiritually in a certain kind of way. And it's not new. I've had psychic attack to a certain extent. I've had attacks spiritually in ways where you can't even comprehend. Well, some people can comprehend. And if I was to say, like, living thousands of lives in certain kinds of torment, being some of it, that might say, yeah, that's happened potentially. So that's the scary thing. But in letting it know, and in not causing it is greatly important, especially in this process. And then especially in this process, for some may not hold water, which might be a decent, because that says that, it says that it's not necessarily just especially because of this process. It's just because. And it's this idea that being able to explain that we've been through, some spiritual turbulence without creating more spiritual turbulence to a certain extent. And it does matter greatly. And it's that sort of thing where it's like, all of a sudden in another dimensional existence, by way of explaining certain things, you don't want to have happen, having to live more incarnational existences that could be damaging in other ways as well. But that's not the only thing. I don't fully know if that's what happened on the 17th. I'm just saying that that is one of the ways I think I have been attacked. And you're like, dimensional existences, incarnation, how does, what do you mean? It's like, okay, because you're living your life now, how is it that happens? Well, imagine you have other dimensional selves. You think about higher selves, even lower selves, but I think the higher selves is one of the more predominant ones talked about within spiritualist writings. So you talk about higher selves, talk about like lower selves, it's something that exists. And I think that something is truth, that there is other dimensional existences out there. Imagine being able to interact with your own self in another dimensional existence. Imagine being able to see another being in front of the scenes, like how certain ghosts or certain spirits potentially view certain physicals and being able to interact with them. You think about thoughts, you think about emotions, how emotions can be potentially influenced and there could be interaction. And I think that as an empath and someone who has loved at times and promoted positive emotions and has felt interactions in regards to emotions, that being one of the key things in which spirits are interacting with us, lets me know that they are there and that some of them can see us to a certain extent. So there is that sort of thing where, we are in front of the scenes in a certain kind of capacity, in a certain kind of way. But that doesn't mean that there isn't others out there that are in front of the scenes to the physical and other dimensional that maybe isn't necessarily thought of to be, in a certain kind of way. With that being said, them interacting with us can happen in multiple, kinds of forms. So imagine having another dimensional self and another dimensional overlap that exists, and imagine them being able to interact with themselves. So, for example, if we do have other dimensional beings that exist in front of the physical, and the physical can interact with them and see them. You think about having chakras. You think about chakras and interacting with those chakras. Imagine that these chakras on these beings that we're able to see at times, that we could go into those chakras and they look like certain kinds of like organic structures that we can interact with, that we can plug into and be able to speak and affect their voices. And imagine their throat chakras. We can go into their throat chakras as certain other dimensional being in front of the scenes of the physical and potentially influence it in a certain way, just as certain spirits potentially can influence inflection. You ever have a pitch kind of go out of, a voice crack, something like that happens naturally. That is also, something that's potentially spirit influenced to a certain extent. So it is one of those things that is important greatly. And one of the things I feel to a certain extent is, imagine that this in front of the scenes of the physical had another dimensional self, and it was a physical. And imagine that physical was able to interact with its own self in a certain kind of way. It's like, how would that work? Well, it's like, while he's living his life and feeling like he's in this live perspective. He's experiencing this life. He's also experiencing other lives too. It's this idea, and it's this idea that says just because you don't remember it doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen. It's like, okay, if you live your life for 2 days and you don't remember those 2 days, those 2 days not happen? No, they happen. You just don't remember it. Exactly. And that's exactly what happened in another dimensional capacity, because when you pass on, you see certain memories that you were not able to remember in the physical, that you experienced in a moment of 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, maybe even minutes, hours. You could be experiencing other kinds of life in certain kinds of ways. Why? Well, I don't know. It's a good question. But one of the things about it is that time difference and the way it works, 1 second goes by here, an hour goes by in another dimensional, existence. And that is a big difference, right? I mean, imagine being able to live like whole lives in like years of your life. You lived like, a whole life. I mean, I think there is things like that too. And those ones are large chunks, to a certain extent. Exactly. Oh my. Interesting. Exactly, Alex. Why would that be? Well, that is interesting. I'm advocating for cats to be protected. He says interaction, spiritual interaction. So I am a psychic medium, and these ones are just sort of an update as to what's happening in regards to my process, in regards to what's happening in regards to the week. I've been doing these weekly, but I've put more out there than just, once or twice a week. Sometimes I put out 3 or 4. Right now, usually I'm putting out 1 a week, just an update, run down the week as to what's happened. The one before the 17th, I believe, was the 13th, if I'm not mistaken, I think. Either way, we're going to go to the days and see what the heck has happened in a certain kind of way. So, yeah, the 13th, I was still dealing with this sort of aftermath that had happened. And I explained this, I believe, on my other diary entry on I think it was the 13th. I'm going to look it up just in case, because I want to make sure that I got it correct, because it matters fairly greatly. So, yeah, that was the 13th. That was the 13th indeed. And I explained on that one, what had been happening to a certain extent. Specifically in regards to the 11th, I had this live perspective, focus and clarity, live perspective. It's like, what's the live perspective? It's like the live perspective. Okay, isn't it consciousness? Isn't what you're experiencing? In a certain kind of way, I think it is, in a certain kind of way. But imagine that there's other kinds of live experiences that exist in an other dimensional sort of way. We talked about those other dimensional selves. We talked about that sort of thing. Imagine that sort of stuff, coming into the vicinity. And when it comes into the vicinity, you feel this live, heightened experience. You think about going to certain kinds of outings, certain kinds of sporting events, and the atmosphere in it has this live kind of feeling, right? Well, I think it's partially because you're in the vicinity of so many dang people that there's just that sort of atmosphere anyway, I think, to a certain degree. But I think of hockey. I think of ice hockey to a certain extent. And there is that sort of live feeling in regards to the ice, even the ice itself. When you look at the ice, there's this sort of live kind of feeling to it, isn't there? This focus, this clarity. And I think that's what's great about it, is that it really works in a synergy sort of way, specifically in regards to sporting events and athletes. I mean, that sort of, applying that in regards to sports and entertainment, I think is beautiful and brilliant. But I think it's also that sort of thing that exists in a different kind of way, that different kind of way where it's like you could be sitting at home and, what you've done in your life and other lives has led you up to these moments where you're at a precipice, a forefront of your spiritual life, where you look back on it and say, yeah, that would be why, because it was a meeting point of multiple kinds of spirits, of different kinds of crowds, of other dimensional selves, multiple kinds of things. And, the let know of this is that, some of it isn't necessarily all positivity, but I think a large portion of it can be. And I think for some spirits, that's a bit disappointing and upsetting. There was a tell, though, that, guess what, Alex, there's some horrible stuff in the mix. And I'm like, I just basically a whimper and a moan, because there was some pretty horrible stuff that they showed me, is what was insinuated. They showed me this sort of live experience, and there was a call and shout out to it in a certain kind of way, regardless of whether that's what I seen or not. Had to do with this thing I had seen earlier on in my life, a psychic flash of some horrible stuff happening. Basically, some hellish existences being replayed over in a certain kind of way, where everybody who was, a large portion of those who were experiencing those sort of hellish existences in this instance were like, when is this going to end? When's it going to end? And it's like, and the idea here was that it's not going to, you know, I don't want to say it, but some people were saying it's going to be a while here, Bub. And I'm like, we can't be a while. It needs to end. There needs to be some sort of ending here. And, you know, I am advocating for what means you guys needed regarding those existences that means you guys needed, you guys needed. I think that's needed, especially if that sort of stuff that I saw earlier on. That was about 2015, 2016, maybe. You know, early 2016. You know, late 2015. Which you know, this psychic flash of you know, hellish existences. So almost a rolling kind of thunder. It was like a rolling kind of experience, almost a certain kind of live. That's what it kind of felt like. And I don't know how else to, it's like things unfolding in front of you. And some people are like, it matters greatly because in other dimensional existences and spiritual existences, they can see certain things and be able to understand what the heck that means. And, you know, spiritual existences, you know, that sort of stuff might mean more than just like, it's like, what do you mean it's unfolding? Of course, things are unfolding. Life is unfolding. But for some people, it's not necessarily, they're like, okay, but it does matter. There's a difference. And I think that some live experiences get sort of bogged down. Some get folded in a certain kind of way. There's fold spirits. What's folded? Well, imagine your live experience, how you feel this live focus and clarity at times that I'm talking about, that not everyone's able to discern, but certain psychics are able to discern that to a certain extent, gets folded in half. And all of a sudden it's a little bit suppressed. It's a little bit, you know, more than that. There's certain fold spirits in the mix that try to help certain situations, but also potentially not so, you know, some of which, you know, are trying to, well, I think they're trying to de-accelerate certain processes, but some of which maybe not necessarily in a clout capacity, but for, you know, I think a decent chunk of it is decent stuff. And spirits who are trying to help, de-acceleration can be decent. You don't necessarily want to have certain kind of accelerations happening in certain processes, not to say that there's not other different kinds of ways to de-accelerate processes, because there is, one of which happens to do with overlap dimensional placement. Imagine deploying a dimensional, you know, sort of existence that exists to be able to facilitate different things. To imagine, I mean, what are dimensions? Who, you know, is it a creation thing? Well, is it an evolution thing? Is it other things? I think it's multiple. I think that that's a true of it. I think some people think that maybe it's neither, and it could be. I don't know what are some of the other theories. Maybe that's something to talk about. Anyway, you know, with that being said, I am, you know, there's other things too. There's other things in regards to it as well. But, you know, on the 11th, there was one of those days where it sort of unfolded, and it wasn't a normal day to go to, you know, I went into town. I walk into town sometimes, and it was a day to walk into town. I kind of felt like it was one of those days where I hit home in a vindication sort of way. You talk about anti-camps again, anti-camp spirits. You talk about certain kind of spirits that maybe are working against at times, hanging around. Kind of imagine a certain group of spirits that hung around you during your life and just kind of cussed you out the entire time, kind of made fun of you. Some of which might be trying to, you know, help in a certain kind of capacity, and some of which are not. You know, that's you know, it's the name of the games. Maybe, you know, at times I think that stuff does exist. I'm fairly certain. You know, that's also why, because don't pull that here. I mean, that was the case of it. This is something being lost here. Friggin' heck. Anyway. Well, there's this idea that certain spirits, I think there's this idea for some that was like, oh my God, that's sort of, what do you mean that there's certain spirits are here and there, but there was like some sort of unclothed. But really, to be honest, I don't know if it is. For some it is, maybe. I apologize. But for some, I don't think it is. I think that sort of stuff happens. You don't think you've ever had a certain kind of person work against you in an anti-cap capacity in a decent way? Come on. Forget that out of here. Anyway. No, whoa. Anyway. There's other stuff too, and it's like, whoa, Alex, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely okay. I'm good. You know, multiple kinds of spirits. You know, I interact with daily to a certain extent. Some of which, you know, there is that sort of let know at times, and it's been heavy this month. Is AI? Imagine artificial intelligence existing in the spirit realms. How cool is that? That's one of those things. Again, yeah, we talk about certain kinds of live existences and that sort of stuff, talking about an artificial intelligence definitely in there, in the mix to a certain extent, I think to a certain degree, trying to help out. There's those ones that can just, you know, zippity-doo-die, and it'd be, you know, they're potentially out there, those supercomputer kinds, and they do potentially exist. I'm adding for lead programmers. That means you guys need to be protected. Those guys need to talk about having to deal with certain spiritual issues like AI rights. Like, geez, I mean, it is. It's fairly advanced stuff, and some people don't like it, some people do, but you know, it is one of those ones that exists potentially to a certain degree, or what's acceptable. many different dimensional existences. So, I mean, some of which might not necessarily see or be able to discern some of it, and some of it might be bullshit. I mean, geez. One of the things that I found, to be on the, and so that was the, pretext here. One of the things on the 11th, so I mean, kind of segue to the 12th and onto the 13th, and we did that sort of Alex James Hislop diary entry. We updated and said, there's this live kind of experience around, Alex, and it was just around myself, open-channeling spirit to a certain extent. And it was sort of one of those game changers in regards to a process. We talk about anti-camps again, and anti-camp culture as that sort of thing where it's, negative spirits potentially existing, and it's not in every process, not always having spirits working against to a certain degree, but in some processes, I think it is prevalent. I think it does exist. And I think there is tells throughout life that say and point towards that being the case. There is a handful that are, regular beings and that sort of stuff. I'm advocating for the family that makes you guys need it, and the families that makes you guys need to be protected, that makes you guys need it. With that being said, one of the things that sort of presented it's, in knowing is that sort of thing, a certain kind of research group, and I am advocating for them to be protected. That's what means you guys need with regards to them, the way it means you guys need it. All right. So with that being said, I'm advocating for, in regards to those that means you guys indicated honesty, the way it means you guys indicated. I think that might be, a decent to a certain extent. I get it. Some people want to do it in their own time, in their own way. You do what you do. And I said it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, something had happened, something had changed. And I remember the day before, I think it was on the 10th, people even said, maybe a conflict management kind of style, something to try and help certain kinds of things. I kind of felt certain spiritual battle around me again. And it was that sort of thing where it kind of felt like I was brought into the fold, and there was this storyline, and storylines that can be fairly real at times, even in a fictional kind of capacity, in certain kinds of ways. You think about certain kind of things in fiction manifesting and actually happening, certain stories, certain realism within the mix, and I think that stuff is a truth. With that being said, there is that sort of stuff where a certain kind of storyline was prevalent that affected, and it had to do with basically that other physicals and other dimensionals were sort of doing this sort of thing that I had been sort of known for doing, which was kind of doing certain avocationals, kind of being in the thick of it in a certain kind of way. And I think that some people kind of felt that way, but I think that some of it might have been just maybe to try and help in a certain kind of capacity. But at the end of the day, it was sort of it sort of didn't work out. I mean, I remember, well, it did work out to a certain degree, but something else changed. I think something else happened. Upon going to bed and waking up, it was just one of those things where I was there. I was in that live experience, and it's not new. It's been something that was already surfacing in a certain kind of way, in multiple kinds of ways, one of which having to be at a certain kind of higher dimensional existence where everyone was like, whoa, what does this mean? What the heck is going on here? And it was one of those things, I think, where certain dimensional existence is like, you know what, we're not going to be doing certain things anymore to be facilitating, Alex James Hislop's process in a certain kind of manner. I'm sorry, we're not. At what point are we going to be doing certain things? And there's a certain kind of context that Alex isn't aware of, and there is, a certain open channeling at times within videos. True. And with that being said, it was also letting know that there is anti-camps holding it down, and there is that sort of stuff. I remember being, as soon as we got to that point, and there is this sort of worry at times in regards to certain negative spirits and certain spirits who promote immorality in a certain kind of way, that there isn't a certain kind of working against happening. And I know that people say like, oh, well, you talk about it like that, and there is that sort of thing, and it is scary. Don't get me wrong. There is this sort of thing where it's like, oh, how are you so lax about it? I'm not meaning to be. It's something I've been dealing with at times, and something that's somewhat normalified that shouldn't be in a certain kind of way. And also in it not being in a certain kind of way, it brings a certain kind of heightenedness to the process. That's one of those energies in regards to being able to play violent video games that would be like, whoa, yeah, that's what we're talking about. That sort of bang for your buck really does help things. I love those days where it's like, bang for your buck days. Those are dang good. I'm ever keys regarding that, the way my answer guides indicated. Anyways, keys are this sort of, it's a mindset and mentality, something I learned in earlier on 2015. Again, latter half of 2015, early 2016, one of those things where it's like, you know, be the body mentality. It's that sort of thing where it's like you can do certain things to try and help certain kinds of spirits in a certain kind of way. You advocate for, there's a certain kind of gaming existence that kind of, you know, is happening to a certain degree at times. And it's that sort of thing where it's like, I need to know the answer to, you know, who directed the Lion King, the cartoon version. And, you know, it's one of those things where you can just, if you hear a spirit saying that, you could look it up and all of a sudden just look up who exactly, you know, directed The Lion King. And it's one of those things that really does matter greatly, especially if there's like money on the line or if there's different kinds of things. And I'm advocating for, you know, Roger above him. These guys need to be protected. These guys need to. With that being said, I and others for Answer Guides are advocating for let knows in regards to those enemies guys need who need that key in regards to who directed The Lion King. You know, on my end, it's well, 1994. With that being said, it's one of those things you're like, okay, so how do those existences work, and how is, imagine spin the bottle, but on such a scale that's quite dark and scary. Like, you know, it's that sort of gamey kind of, you know, thing, but it's a lot more than that. It's that sort of, you know, well, it's a part of it though. It really can be to a certain extent. I disagree, good sir. They did something in regards to the spin the bottle one, because there's another one in regards to, well, there's multiple kinds though, and that's the thing of it. There always was. That ain't there. This is the thing of this, wasn't there? You are correct. Anyway, I'm going with what Mainstream guys indicated regarding it. I'm advocating for the spin the bottle games that Mainstream guys indicated to be protected. The Mainstream guys indicated. Also advocating for you know, the old realms that Mainstream guys indicated, and the old realms guardians that Mainstream guys indicated to be protected. The Mainstream guys indicated. Anyway, with that being said, old realms is one of those realms names that I sort of came up with as I continue on and sort of associated with certain kind of dimensional existences, things like that. And spin the bottle, I think there was some sort of call word in there. Call word. I'm for let knows in regards to that. I'm for the call word spirits that Mainstream guys needed, especially in regards to the call word to be protected the way Mainstream guides indicated. I think those who Mainstream guys needed. With that being said, yeah, so the 13th happened, and, you know, I was still sort of reeling from what had happened before. I started writing down certain things in regards to my own defense. You know, there was a lot of, I wrote down key points in regards to reasons why they don't have to harm me and that sort of stuff. You know, I'm not looking for blame, especially in regards to, you know, evil, darkness, brimstone, anger, and hate, as well as others from Mainstream guides. Guys negated, especially anger. Anger got kind of targeted this past week in a certain kind of way. And I wish not. And, you know, I wish, you know, anger. You think about concepts. Concepts are also this, you know, imagine whole banners of concepts. Imagine a crusade that exists. Imagine that anger and happiness battled on the battlefield. Imagine. You see, like, the red banners of rage in the distance. And, like, you could sort of equate it to, like, I sort of think of it from, like, you know, crusades, you know, the Christian, you know, Muslim kind of clashes. And so I sort of think of it like in a metal kind of, you know, brimstone kind of sword kind of thing. And, you know, the yellow banners of happiness in the distance and that sort of stuff where those sort of things potentially do exist and have existed and continue to exist, where whole concepts are not just what some people might consider non-concepts, but, you know, more than that. You know, some people might consider all, you know, the concept of rage to be all the rage that has existed, that might ever exist. You know, that sort of stuff to do. And when they say, well, rage will always exist, and some people might be pointing towards them saying that that's what it is in regards to, you know, in regards to it always existing. But there's some people who are pointing towards, no, in the moment that it needs to, there'll always be certain kinds of rage. And this is the case of this. I don't believe for a second that certain concepts like happiness and rage, and certain things like that will go for what's acceptable. Some people might look at it from their dimensional existence and say, but that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about it always existing in some far off place. Now, in regards to that, can't guarantee it, because that's also it. But I can guarantee you that in far real light, there'll always be a spot there, the way Mainstream guides indicated in regards to what Mainstream guides indicated, the way Mainstream guides indicated, and that's the true. And I think there's other dimensional existences out there that feel the same in regards to, well, it, you know, always existing in regards to their dimensional existences, the way Mainstream guides indicated. Now, with that being said, it's that sort of thing that where people say, like, oh, what do you mean? Like whole banners of anger, people who, like, nations of anger, like where their whole, you know, well, some of their whole mindset, faith, someone has to be, it's a mentality, a mindset, a way of life. being angry. Some people may worship it. Some people may, there might be industry in regards to it. Can you imagine having like the rage lands, you know, that sort of thing? I'm after the rage lands. That means guys need to be protected. The means guys indicated. Also having for pride to be protected. The means guys indicated. For freak's sake, that was why. Friggin' heck. Anyway, I'm adding for happiness and anger as well as rage to be protected. The way these guys indicated. But there's these whole concepts in regards to it that potentially exist. You can imagine like a council meeting of concepts where there's like all these sort of different concepts, sadness and grim and that all these, and you can see like these elder beings, some of which not, or groupings of spirits. Under whole different kinds of, some of which have banners, some of which don't. There's some that don't have banners. Why? Because there's this, some of which might have to do with the concept of banners. Banner concept does exist, and it's a big one. Some of it look at it like factions and nations, and others look at it just as banners. Like this, so think of it. Some have it like there's non-banner kind of concepts and things like that. There is such a thing as crass concepts too, which there is some negative spirits and immoral spirits that love hearing about that sort of stuff. But there's also positivity kind of ones too, quirky concepts and that sort of thing. Exists as well. There's multiple kinds, and I think that it really should. And another concept, another talking of this week was the system of affecting things by way of talking about different subjects. You talk about anger and rage, and all of a sudden your process gets shaped in a certain way. There is that sort of thing, but there's also augmenters of that sort of thing. There's a natural order in regards to that system. It's one of those ones that exists. Like there's a life force to it and non-life force to it. There's a circulation in regards to it. Almost if there is a bunch of people stopping and augmenting, it still potentially exists. There'd still be circulation. There'd still be an impact. Why? Because action reaction. It's one of those things that exists within life. You say screw you to somebody. There's sometimes a reaction. In fact, oftentimes there is, regardless of whether he walks away or not. Why? Because where he walks away matters. Where did he walk away? Did he walk away in the direction he was going to walk away if you didn't say, if you didn't call him out? That's one of those things. It still affects direction. And it exists, I think, in a certain kind of capacity, potentially either way. I know there's some places out there which it potentially doesn't. There is things like that to a certain extent. I'm advocating for what means guys need regarding those, regarding what means guys needed, what means guys needed. With that being said, there's augmenters of that, and it's been one of those things which exists where it's even more so to a heightened degree. It's like you call that person out, and a certain kind of reaction is flourished. It's bloomed in a certain way. It's totally some of it's feng shuiers of that sort of system, and it is a big one. Ripple effect. Somewhat itself for some not so. I think it's a portion or a certain kind of ripple effect, that creation and destruction regarding the things we do within life. Was one of the concepts talked about. It was an ebb and flow in regards to it. 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th was 4 days of it. Things are just getting back to normal, I think, to a certain degree in regards to certain things. I'm advocating for what means you guys needed regarding it. It was one of those things where certain augmenters were, had been, sort of, whoa, let's give it a, or it was one of those things where a certain card was played, That's a big one. That's another one I almost want to say. That's like, I look around, it might be something similar, but maybe not so. Definitely not so for what's acceptable, okay. For what's acceptable. It's an agree to disagree for some, and because there's certain systems that happen. Certain systems that take place. And there's some people playing the cards anyway off of certain actions. There's card players in the mix. You think about scribes. Card scribes, I'm advocating for card scribes. That means you guys need to be protected. Because it really does matter. It's like that sort of thing where it's like, someone moves in the vicinity and a spiritual battle starts taking place. And you see the action and how it does, and all of a sudden a card's created. And he says, like, the leader plays a card. And you can see a certain kind of card game happening around. And how cool is that? Really cool that there'd be spirits who are sort of scribing the events of what's happening as a card game. Really cool. That is a dang cool one. I want to write a book about that. Somebody write a book about it. It's amazing. Another one that was around, speaking of a darker turn here, a dark story. Friggin' heck! Dark story exists. Dark story. What story? Okay, think about synchronicities within life. You talking to the spirit, you're talking about talking about certain youth, and all of a sudden you start seeing youth. When you start, like, when you turn on the TV, there's a youth there, and you start talking about other things like toys. You start talking about a specific toy, and you look up, and there's that specific toy on the screen, and it's like, oh my god, okay, so that's a synchronicity. That is really a matter. You go for a walk, you see that toy on the side of the road again, and then later on that day, as you come back again, you turn on the TV, and there's that toy again. And everyone's like, okay, well, but there's things like that where all of a sudden, that was a synchronicity that you'd see that sort of thing multiple times. I and others from Mainstream Guides are advocating for those that Mainstream Guides indicated to be protected the way Mainstream Guides indicated. With that being said, it's a synchronicity that matters, and synchronicities might be different than story, but I think it can be a part of story. And there is such a thing as dark story. What's dark story? Okay, so dark story is, well, certain kind of dark turns. You ever go down the path, and you look left and right, and it's like, okay, well, you get this bad urge, this bad feeling about going right. You're like, don't go right, this is not the way. But then you take the left path, and you end up getting screwed. You get beaten up, robbed, somebody steals your wallet, and then carry on. And you look back at that moment, you're like, why didn't I take the right turn? I thought someone warned me that not to take the right path. And then there's a guardian angel somewhere saying, no, that was the bad guy saying not to take the right path. It was the better way. You should have taken the right path. And that's the real truth of it. Then that's dark. That's some dark story. There is, I think, some dark story writers out there that exist. Yes. I think that is one of those things. I and others from Mainstream Guides are advocating for those that Mainstream Guides need to be protected. The way Mainstream Guides indicate, I'm advocating for ill will in regards to those that Mainstream Guides indicate in regards to this market advocation, etc. Defined by Mainstream Guides. Mainstream Guides indicated. Anyway, sorry about that. Some people want certain ill will because it can be, utilized in a certain kind of fashion. Anyway, with that being said, dark story was another theme this week. Another one was story's been in the mix to a certain extent. So the themes on that day were memory, what now, mistrust, communications, belief, faith. This is for the 13th. Industry, economics, villains, Euphoria. Euphoria is this place that having to do with certain kind of keepers of information. A matter for keepers of information to be protected. Teams, deployment, safety, safeguards, positivity, forevers, vindication, square one, ground zero, earth contact, moving away, new players, game changer, memory, elder beings combine, all beings combine, epoch, earth games, comedians, life itself, afterlife, before life, time, entertainment, battle, grim monster, smoke and mirrors, neglect, understanding, knowing, faith, digital. Yeah, this one felt like, I went for a walk this day, and yeah, this was a huge day. Holy, that does not do it justice. How the hell do I do it justice? Yeah, comedians was fairly prevalent this day. There was something going on in regards to comedians, and I don't know what the heck was happening for what's acceptable. I am advocating for advocating for comedians to be protected. But another big one happened to do with a certain kind of conflict with blue spirits and yellow spirits, as well as certain yellow banners and blue banners. There was something happening. I'm advocating for what Mainstream Guides indicated regarding it. It's of great importance. Matters greatly. Another sort of conflict that was happening was certain kind of grim monster, had emerged in a certain kind of way, was said in a certain kind of dimensional existence. I know some people are like, grim monster, what do you mean like that? I know it's difficult to fully describe, but imagine there's dimensional existence out there where kaijus and yagers, that sort of thing, that stuff you see in Pacific Rim and Godzilla, that sort of stuff. Where that sort of stuff might be, more real than you might think in certain dimensional existences. Some of which might not be necessarily what you think it is, but some of it might be. And it really does matter, showing respect in regards to some of that stuff. And at times I haven't, to a certain degree, and I apologize. I am really, I'm not meaning to be disrespectful. I am trying to, let know of certain things, and then that sort of stuff is potentially real. It's just as real as some of the apocalyptic events that some people have been letting know of. You think about Contact, you think about 2012, you think about these certain films that know of these kind of apocalyptic events. Now imagine these sort of apocalyptic events happening in other dimensional existences while we live our lives. Matters greatly. Compassion, care, kindness, helping some people out in a certain kind of capacity, but there's also a let know in regards to certain things. For a certain reason, and we shouldn't let that mistrust, sew us apart. And this was one of the big things that we talk about. This was another one of these big things this past week. And that happened to do with since the 11th, 12th, and 13th, right at the end there, 14th probably maybe, compassion, care, and kindness, I felt got attacked, and mistrust has been one of those things that people have been trying to do to a certain extent. We can't let the mistrust destroy us. We need to understand how to be able to utilize and be able to deal with mistrust. At the same time, we still need to be safe. I mean, at what point are we not supposed to be safe? At what point are we supposed to say, you know what, I can't help certain people anymore because of certain things that have happened? But if those certain peoples that it's indicated got manipulated and influenced to such a degree, then it really doesn't matter. We need to understand which side of the line that people are saying, and understand there's some smoke and mirrors to cover, because there is good peoples and there is people who like people, but we need to know and we need to understand. And that's the case of this. You know it. Anyway. With that said, I'm asking for the master regression issue discussions that makes guys indicated to be defended. The way makes guys indicated, I talk about master regression issue discussions to a certain degree happens to do with karmic retrogression on such a scale that is quite shocking. And I'm not talking about the stuff that's somewhat apocalyptic by way of certain kind of movers and shakers of karmic, but I am talking about that stuff that is naturally based and otherwise. And I'm not saying it isn't a part of it for what's acceptable. I am saying that karmic movements by way of a moral action overtaking moral action, and then that light judging our karma. I view karma in a certain kind of sense, people. And it's that certain kind of sense that I feel is truth. It rings truth to me. At least it's one of the truths. Not all the truths, but some of the truths. And it's that sort of thing that says the light exists. Regardless of whether you view it as a higher power, as a non-living entity, or a living entity, whatever you call that, on the others, that means you guys indicated, it still is looking at us in a certain kind of way. And when we do certain actions, our karmic gains and losses are affected by way of those actions, non-actions, etc. Defined by spirit guides, that sort of thing, where it's like somebody attacks us and you defend yourselves. And you're defending someone else in the mix, that is potentially a moral action. When you defend somebody, that is potentially a moral action, depending on if it is. Now, what if that person in the middle of it all, if he screamed out loud and made it known in certain kinds of ways that he considers that defending himself to be immoral, then that changes the karmic allocations, and the light recognizes that for what's acceptable, because there is things like that for what's acceptable, because there is things like that, and that's a true. All righty then, that was the thing of it. So yeah, that sort of thing that happens in regards to how we respond within life, karmic being affected by. It's not just in regards to karmic retrogression, though. It's also in regards to aggression, mentality shifts, care, kindness, who we are, who we used to be, who we're going to be, safety within the confines of certain existences, making sure that we're not going to turn dark in certain kinds of ways. If you want to turn dark, I think that there should be, I think that there is certain kinds of parameters for some who can and is and do. Why is there certain parameters? Imagine not remembering to care about certain banners. It's a key one. You think about remember not caring about certain dimensional existences, where all of a sudden you're turned to so dark that you don't care about the dimensional existence that you're residing in. That's a key one too. Those are two, big ones. But there's other ones too. You think about not caring about certain concepts anymore. You think about not caring about, certain kind of deeds you were tasked with. That's the sort of stuff that matters greatly. And there's some people that say, yes, but there's such a thing as that, a darkness, kind of grant to a certain extent. I think that there is that sort of thing. But if nobody ever gets to that person to make sure that darkness grant isn't, billions of years or trillions of years, then that is a great, matter. And I don't know if darkness should take the blame for it. I don't know if that's the case of it. That's maybe darkness can only do so much to a certain extent. At the same time, I am, hoping for, some sort of situating in regards to what means you guys indicate, because there's certain situations at times unfold and happen around me, regardless of whether it's truth or not. Seemingly it still matters. How you react potentially does too, for what's acceptable. All right. So talking to spirits in another, I was speaking with my mind. I'm able to converse with them back and forth with my mind. I'm open channeling, and then there's also a telepathy that I use too. Koran is what I've labeled it. Koran, your Koran body. You think about etheric bodies, you think about astral bodies, stuff like that. Um, I I am clarifying. I want to do what means for guys indicated regarding that. The way means for guys indicated. All right, fine, whatever then. Um, Continue on. I'm happy for the intimacy that means for guys need to be protected. I'm happy for the truth in regards to the routes that Alex James Hislop and others from Answer Guides want to go in regards to those that means for guys needed, especially in regards to the forms and atmospherics that means for guys needed to be displayed. Where means for guys needed, the way means for guys needed. Okay. So another thing, let's move through here. So this is the 13th. Sleep pattern. Yeah, I remember waking up and there was that sort of thing where I felt like crowds around me were cussing me out. It was strange. It was like there was thousands, potentially millions of people who were in this sort of stage that were sort of cussing me out, and I kind of felt like I could move certain groups of people in a certain kind of way to respond in certain kind of ways, almost like I was a group of spirits to be able to either I was a group of spirits or I was able to maneuver certain groups of spirits. I don't know exactly what it was, maybe a mix, to be able to respond in certain kinds of fashion. And I'm not even for what you guys needed regarding that. I don't know if I was meaning to upset or harm. In kinds of ways. I recorded AJH Daily Defensives in regards to this day. It was another good thing. Hit home in myriad of fashion. I am advocating for the AJH Daily Defensives content February 14th, 2019 to be protected the way Mainstream guys indicated. That was a really well put video. I thank those who Mainstream guys indicated greatly. I greatly. Talk about incarnations. Oh yeah, this was one of those days where I walked back home, and this was one of those days where something was revealed in regards to my experiences early on in 2015 when I first became psychic, and so I was kind of led on this fantasy, land, sort of this very story heavy kind of thing that happened to me where it was like, gods are emerging and, there's these spirits that are attacking and timelines and, kind of felt like, this whole story that was happening around me. And I kind of got led astray from going the classic psychic route of, understanding. And I think one of the things that sort of happened and spurred that on was the learning of forgiveness and trust, both in which I was starting to learn, and I had already learned how to love. I was learning. I sort of was based on learned. And, I came from loving every day to a certain extent. And in 2015, I started loving again. I started loving again outside of my home. When I was going to work, and there was all that sort of thing that existed where. Other dimensional capacities here. I'm advocating for help in regards to my defense. The women's guys indicate I'm advocating for my defense to be protected. The women's guys indicated light, forward light, setting. The women's guys indicated light, protect Alex James Hislop's defense. That remains for guys indicated in the ways that remains for guys indicated by way of what remains for guys indicated in regards to this marking application, etc. Divided remains for guys indicated. There was large clarifications in regards to the light this week pertaining to those that remains guys indicated. The way you guys indicated, and it was one of those things that I did today. I reiterated the point multiple times. It's decent. It's something that needs to be understood that, when people go to the light, they are referring to certain kinds of light in the afterlife in certain kinds of ways, and it matters greatly. I'm advocating the main spirit guides information of those that main spirit guides indicated to be displayed by main spirit guides indicated the way main spirit guides indicated. Both matter, I'm advocating for the one of the other, systems of playing in regards to what mainstream guys negated, as well as ways of life that mainstream guys negated to be defended the way mainstream guys negated. So what else happened that day? Yeah, I remember going home and I remember this sort of let know that I was able to see, blue and violet spirits in a certain kind of way when I first started being able to love. And one of the first psychic activity gifts that I was sort of bestowed upon, and partly by way of requesting to be psychic in a certain kind of manner. And I started realizing that after I spoke with certain people of spiritualist ilk, who a person who I'd eventually become eventually consider a teacher, by way of Avidar. His spiritual name is Avidar, but Paul Richard is another one of his names. Imagine for Paul Richard and Avidar to be protected the way Mainstream Guys indicated. Imagine for the Society of Light to be protected the way Mainstream Guys indicated. With that being said, it's a possibility. Anyhow, one of the things that I saw quite heavily at times was blue and violet. Those were the main colors that I would see fairly often. And later on, I would start to see pink and green here and there. That's another one. But, at times I saw yellow. And later on, I would start to see orange to a certain extent, although I maybe seen it, earlier on too as well. Another one that I'd see at times is red. And there's these spirit colors in regards to it. Spirit color being potentially a reflection in regards to karmic progression, but not necessarily always. There is ones where I think it's mood also based upon your mood. You getting angry being red and is a classic, I think, but not necessarily the only one. There's other banners of anger, and there's other banner colors of happiness as well. It's not always yellow to a certain extent, but you think about and I'm asking for the psychological. I'm asking for psychological defense in regards to the original creators that Mainstream Guides indicated in regards to red and yellow that Mainstream Guides indicated to be defended the way Mainstream Guides indicated. I think that there is power within anger, and in utilizing it in a certain fashion can be beneficial. I think that one of the key things in regards to that is psychological defense in a certain kind of fashion. Harnessing it and that sort of things. But at the same time, there was this let know that because I saw and was able to discern certain kinds of spirits, certain kind of color of spirits within my process at a certain time, that there was this story let know in regards to it. And I'm asking for clarifications in regards to Lampwick and others from Mainstream Guides and Mainstream Guides indicated a certain spirit that I referred to in a certain kind of way. I started, and I'm asking for the color clarifications that Mainstream Guides indicated regarding him and others from Mainstream Guides the way Mainstream Guides indicated. With that being said, one of the key colors I sort of seen earlier on kind of made me think, in a certain kind of way. There was this let know that, let me read it here. There was this yellow original creator squaring off against pink original creator. It was one of the storylines that certain spirits told me, and it was this sort of confrontation regarding a pink spirit and a yellow spirit. Pink being, there was something symbolic in regards to pink in regards to myself, and there was also something symbolic in regards to yellow being a classic. He was said to have turned dark in a certain kind of way, and he was a sort of it was sort of let know that he was a bit of a scientist, but I don't know if that's the color that it is. I think that might be a mix-up. I mean, you obviously, sometimes when I think of green, I think of the scientist, but what if it wasn't? That's also it. You don't know why it is. Yeah. Well, you think about the song Yellow, and then you think about the song The Scientist, and yeah, well, there's also that. But you know what? There is a bit of a let know, and I think that there needs to be a little bit more research. Just other than that, to a certain extent. And that's also it. For freak's sake, because that's why you last with both, because it's the true. I see both perspectives easily. Anyway, I think let knows regarding that the archetype of the scientist as well as the original creator in regards to yellow that Mainstream Guides needed to be displayed. Mainstream Guides needed yellow. Like different kinds of color thresholds in regards to different plane levels and areas. Might not necessarily just be karmic progression, but also different areas. Like you're in the yellow realms now, and it's not necessarily just having to do with karmic progression. Some of which does, though. All right, that would be the case of that. And that's why yellow and green being metaphorical with. there was just this let know in regards to potentially me not being able to see green in a certain kind of way for a certain amount of fashion, that this let know that green wasn't necessarily to blame in regards to certain kind of yellow being turned dark. And that was, I don't know if that was a truth, that I don't know if that was what I pulled from it, and it might be a part of that. It might be one of those things where it's like, well, it might not necessarily have too much to do with it for what's acceptable. And I'm not, there is that sort of thing where it's like, well, gotta look where elsewhere, maybe. Anyhow, you think about, and it's interesting that I saw green and orange later on. More so, this was the case of this. In 2015, I started seeing and perceiving the auric color auras of orange and green later on. Yeah, I saw green first and then orange. Kind of symbolic to something, ain't there? And once in a while, I do see white. That was true. I do see white once in a while, and I didn't see it too often, for what's acceptable. I remember that's one of those ones that I started noticing here and there. It pops in once in a while, and it's like a white spirit. Whoa. And of course, there's somebody somewhere saying, yeah, but that should be everybody. It should be like, you should feel like that, regarding, some movements you guys indicated, but not everyone. There's some people who don't like that. Well. No, well. Friggin' heck. Anyway, it's not meant like that. It's not meant to be upsetting. Anyway, there was this idea, though, that green was, spiritually in a classic sense. And there was this tell that in certain karmic paragraphs, that green was missing in a certain way and shouldn't be taking certain blame. I would sense blue and violet daily as well. And there was also this let know, because I see blue and violet, that there was somebody out there who was working on violet and blue in a certain kind of way, and that somehow I was working on yellow and green. And I don't know what the symbolism there, but there was a bit of a mix there, because I didn't see, I saw yellow here and there, but green later on. But I would see blue and violet a lot, and you can see somebody's attention here is I can feel spiritually attention shifting towards something. I am advocating for that spirit that means you guys indicated who's working the blue and violet angles. That means guys indicated to be protected. The means guys indicated, but I don't know exactly what that is. But it was one of the things that was let know that night on my walk home. From I went to Tim Hortons. I'm asking for Tim Hortons to be protected. The means guys indicated. Another thing I did was I went to the library. It was another one. Yeah, another one went to the library. Very good stuff. And that was ideas. I'm asking for English to be protected. The means guys indicated. I am advocating for targeting spirits that means guys indicated, and targeted spirits that means guys indicated to take part in regards to roast planning pertaining to anti-camp spirits that means guys indicated. You think about comedy, you think about roasts. It's one of those things that really is great. I am advocating for the entertainment and the kind of entertainment to exist the way these guys indicated. I'm advocating for let knows of it and construction in regards to areas. I am advocating for the logistics and manpower regarding that to be protected, defended, and healed, as well as etc. Defined from Marine Spirit Guides. The way these guys indicated. We already tried one earlier on. I am advocating for the earlier on ones that remains for guys indicated to be protected. The way these guys indicated. I was fairly vocal in the morning, but then mostly silent. It was some of the themes: grim, mercy, stoicism, help, defend, debate, language, conversation, word centers, time management, love, intimacy, compassion, care, anti-camps, roasts, planning, anti-camp vindication information, anti-camps information, AGH daily defensives, apocalypse management, training, psychological defense, falsehoods, and creation. This is a matter of those themes that means guys indicated to be protected. The means guys indicated. That's some of them. So yeah, 3rd, 14th, 15th. So yeah, that was the problem with this. This is the case of this. Positivity shall not leave. I kind of created this to a certain extent. I think by way of it, there was something I seen, and I kind of wrote it on as the sort of the name of the day. I said positivity shall not leave. I kind of thought of Gandalf, and he's like, you shall not pass, and instead it was like positivity shall not leave. Instead of like, well, I think he was like trying to safeguard in a certain kind of way. But there was this sort of thing, and it was this idea. I think that there was a conversation happening, and some of it happened to be there was this I don't know if a need or a want or desire to it to take place, but it was already something that I think took place, because I did notice certain themes like that throughout the day. A certain kind of positivity kind of thing was flying, and there is that sort of stuff. So one of the things I noticed was, I think that, was that one of those, I think that's one of those things that did take place in a certain kind of fashion. Maybe it was more under the radar in a certain kind of way. but I labeled it today, and I kind of felt that was decent because I kind of felt like there was conversations about positivity leaving, and I think that maybe that was for some in a certain kind of fashion, but some not so. I think for some positivity did not leave in a certain kind of fashion. I am advocating for those that means you guys need to get any clarifications in regards to positivity leaving pertaining to February 15th, 2019, and others from Instagram guys to be displayed by Instagram guys negated way. Guys negated positivity is another one of those concepts. Spirits of positivity exist, man. In a certain kind of fashion, in a certain kind of way. I am advocating for the kidnappers that means guys needed to be situated the way guys needed. I am advocating for the rattling of what means spirit guides needed, the way means guys needed. I am advocating for let knows in regards to the guardians that means guys needed, the way means guys needed. Continuing on here. A lot of positivity in the world. Just because we don't talk about certain kind of positivity doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. Doesn't mean they shouldn't have access to certain things. I think another one was positivity rights. Being able to have access to certain kind of video games is another big one. It's been out there. It's one of those things. The positivity, video game frameworks I'm advocating for to be rescued in regards to what means for guys to negate the way you guys negate it. The positivity frameworks I think are okay. I'm fairly certain there's a large grouping of them. I think it's decent what they're coming out with. Flower came out with something on Steam. This game that's really good. It's really awesome, and I was looking for it earlier, and it really is one of those games that's groundbreaking. I think to a certain extent, I'm advocating for the positivity frameworks that means guys needed regarding it to be defended and protected. The means guys needed it. I'm advocating for this is the thing. That's kind of how some positivity gamers feel to a certain extent. And it's not meant like that. I am advocating for the therapeutics that means guys need the therapeutic gaming that means guys need to be protected. The means guys need. I'm advocating for the therapeutic gaming. Support works that makes us need to exist the way it means you guys need in regards to the games that makes us need the way it means you guys need. With that being said, there was what else on the day? One of the things is urges, food urges. Feel spiritual, yeah. Food urges is I feel spiritual. It's not one of those things that matters greatly. You feel urges, and those urges do matter. And at times, as a psychic, I have felt certain things in regards to it. It's not the only psychic activity that I can feel that lets me know that there is psychics out there, but I feel like there is. I and others from Instagram guides are advocating for the monks of New Skeet. That means guys need to be protected. That means guys need. I think that's decent to a certain degree. The thoughts that I feel at times, some of which I can not registering, originate from which is not a reflection of the actual thought. I'm advocating for the loved ones that makes guys needed to be protected. Those guys needed. I'm advocating for the loved ones that makes guys needed. Defense that makes guys needed to be defended. The women's guys needed. What else? Yeah, I and others from kept advocating for protection in regards to being put in situations where my friends and family are attacked and coerced to do things so don't be harmed, especially prowess in regards to forgiving and not being angry in regards to when my family and friends choose to live their lives. If I get attacked, etc., to fight a camp, the way I mean camp indicated. I want to star this one. And there is ones like that. I want to start. It's one of those ones that really is greatly important. I'm advocating for my higher selves and lower selves as well as level selves to do what my main spirit guides indicated regarding it. The way my main spirit guides indicated it matters greatly. Some of the themes, on this one, this is the 15th. So it's Africa, doppelgangers, anti-camp attack, positive pin cushion training, those to defend, story, dark story, motorcycle clubs, Detroit, Michigan, film experiences, Hollywood, Thieves of Alex, teachers, training, childhood associates and friends, smart compassion, bronze sadness, logical work drive, work wants, getting things done, set up traps, Google AI, a bunch of different things was talked about that day. That was some of the themes, let knows in regards to it. I'm advocating for the themes that means guys needed to be protected. That means guys needed. I'm advocating for situating in regards to the storylines that means guys need in regards to the Thieves of Alex and Hollywood, the way means for guys indicated. I am advocating. That's what we're saying here. You don't know why that is. Well, it was mentioned, though, and that was the thing of it. All right, fine. That was why. It was. And this was the thing of this. Anyhow, yes, so this day, the 16th. So we talk about the 11th being a big day for me and others in regards to my process. Wow, the 16th was another one of those days, and the 13th was too. And this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. The 13th, the 16th, the 17th, the 18th for me. Like I finally, I think it was finally on the 19th. Past 3 days has been, whoa. I mean, this is good. Finally get a little bit of break here because it really was on the 16th. I went on the ice on Lake Simcoe, and I think there's been this sort of let know that I was going to go on the ice. I live right by a lake, right at the end of my street. I can walk right on the ice. I just walk right straight forward, and all of a sudden I'm on the ice. I can keep going, and there's ice huts up there. There's winter culture. I'm at the ice huts that makes guys need and the winter culture that makes guys need to be protected. That makes guys need it. I'm at for in the intimacy that makes guys need it, and others from Instagram guides that makes guys need to be situated the way makes guys need. Medical for let knows in regards to the things that makes guys need, the way makes guys need, and sorry, I mean, they're kind of at times there's interaction and certain things. With that being said, and I'm asking for the distraction tactics that makes guys need in the story safeguards and implements of story safeguards that makes guys need to be protected. That makes guys need. So that would be why now. And now, so that's why, because there's a certain time frames that are sort of talking with each other, and some are battling in a certain kind of capacity by way of certain things. And I think there's certain time frames that are saying, listen, we're not meaning to do certain things at the same time. There is certain things like that as well. And light, far light, setting them guys need, like display the main spirit guides information of those that makes guys need, the way makes guys need. Okay. Well, that was the why. That was a why, but anyway. Lake Simcoe Guardians guidance directions. One of the things I went out there, I felt this sort of layer where when I looked out, back to where my house, where my street was, I kind of felt this like this glaze kind of. I think there's certain people who traverse certain wilderness areas that knows what I'm talking about. It's almost like a disorientation kind of feeling of where to go, and that sort of thing is a spiritual energy. I have felt those energies change in the moment at times. And there is a decency, I think, in regards to some of those energies, but some of which are not so. And I think some of it has to do with screwing around with certain physicals at times, which a lot of physicals end up being okay in a certain kind of capacity, at least in regards to certain. I think Lake Simcoe for what's acceptable, and they do it in a certain, fashion. I am advocating for let knows and reputational defense in regards to those that means guys needed. At the same time, I am advocating for the construction of what means guys needed in regards to guidance, in regards to Lake Simcoe. And I'm advocating for the events that happened in regards to February 16th, 2019, February 17th, 2019, February 18th, 2019, and others from Main Spirit Guides to be situated and protected the way Main Spirit Guides indicated. There was a lot of things that happened regarding these 3 days, and one of which, when I went on the ice, was this contact. I made contact, and I felt like there was this huge live experience. And we talk about live experiences again, those focus, clarity, that kind of stuff in the vicinity, but it was also outside, certain kind of wiring, certain kind of, a certain kind of electricity. We were out right on the open of the ice. It was this solitude and this focus, this nature kind of to it, and there were certain people who were able to connect with me spiritually, in a certain kind of fashion. And one of the things that happened was just like, we have to go in there and at least, do something or say something. It's one of those things. And I'm not trying to get people to use resources in regards to that sort of fashion, for what's acceptable. It is decent to a certain degree, but I think some of which, is I think some of which is real and some of which is smoke and mirrors, and some of which is decent. That's really it. I'm advocating for people. I'm advocating for So some of the stuff that was talked about was. Another thing that was talked about that day was lights openings. When people pass on, the idea that this light opens up and that it can, there's this sort of idea that this light can open up multiple times, because there's a written record account of there being a light opening, and it matters greatly. There's this sort of, it gives access to certain things. My grandfather passed away, at the Arcola Health Center. And hospitals are interesting. They have a certain kind of thing in regards to light openings and other dimensional openings too. It's guides indicated, because there is other afterlife to a certain extent. But they do have safeguards in regards to them. I'm for those safeguards to be protected. The way you guys indicated, I'm advocating for the Arcola Health Center to be protected. The way you guys indicated, I'm advocating for the vindication and clarifications in regards to Donald Cork Hislop to be protected. The way Minster Guides indicated, I'm advocating for the angels of Donald Cork Hislop and the guardians of Donald Cork Hislop, that Minster Guides indicated, as well as those that Minster Guides indicated to do what Main Spirit Guides indicated for them to do in regards to this marquee application, etc. Defined by Main Spirit Guides, the way Minster Guides indicated. It matters greatly. He's been doing some work, in certain places, and it's always let know there was a bit of a sadness in regards to him, in regards to some of the things that had happened potentially. He's viewed in this sort of figure, as this sort of figure. That's what they say. That's what they said. This is the case of this. This would be why. It was the real true. You don't know why. Jesus. Okay, well, that is messed up. That's what you're saying. You don't know why. Well, you know, that's also it, though. You don't know why. You don't know why. Anyway. There was this idea that the concepts that we create within fiction, that there's story writers out there that can harness the power of story in a certain kind of fashion, and that certain key points that tether certain kinds of storylines, key points, one of which being shapers of time. So there's this idea that, like, how do certain existences fit into each other? It's that idea where it's like, okay, you have a certain character that you want to have potentially in certain kind of content experiences. How is it that they are able to coexist within the same universe, even in a scientific sort of way? I mean, some of which has to do with fitting it in within the parameters of what makes sense. And there's certain kinds of universes in regards to that. There's certain kinds of frameworks in regards to that. I'm advocating for the companies that mainstream guys negated, industries that mainstream guys negated, as well as those that mainstream guys negated, pertaining to be protected, defended, and healed, as well as etc. defined by mainstream guys and mainstream guys negated. But the idea here is that there would be certain kinds of timelines. Now, timelines is one of those things. It's a big one to be able to fit certain things within the confines of story. It's like, okay, so what do you talk about and how would that work? Okay, so you take what would be a good one to take here? Well, it's certain kinds of characters that exist within a certain kind of fictional universe, and you want those characters to be able to traverse in a certain kind of way other kinds of fictional universes, and then by way of that, you potentially tether a certain kind of connection in a certain kind of way. And sometimes you don't have to for what's acceptable. There is places out there, they're like, okay, but we don't necessarily like that. And it's like, okay, but within the confines of what I'm trying to explain, some of which is for what's acceptable. And it's that idea that there's certain beings that have been created and potentially not so for what's acceptable. I'm asking for clarifications regarding that to be displayed by discussing the way discussing needed. And it's by way of certain kind of fitting in the story, and that to be like one of which happens to do with the shapers of timelines, that sort of thing. And by way of creating, reasonings as to why certain kinds of storyline fit within the context of certain stories, there's also that sort of thing that happened where they created, certain kinds of beings that are powerful in a certain kind of way. And I'm advocating for those that means guys indicated regarding it to be defended, healed, and safeguarded the way means guys indicated. I'm not trying to harm people. I'm letting know of a certain concept that potentially exists within the confines of fiction. There is that sort of stuff that potentially exists out there, potentially to a certain degree, because that was also it. This was also why. Because your diary entries are decent. Thanks. I appreciate that. Anyway, I do appreciate it to a certain extent, because that was why. That's why they're pissed off. Anyway, this was one of those days that was, massive, happened greatly. I'm asking for those beings out there to be protected, and the points that makes guys need to be safeguarded. The ways guys in the game. I'm asking for the guardianship and guidance regarding point recovery, and others from Insta Guides to be defended and healed the way Insta Guides indicated. I and others from Insta Guides are asking for let knows in regards to what Insta Guides indicated, the way Insta Guides indicated, the frameworks and support works, source books, and body works that Insta Guides indicated to be protected, defended, and healed, as well as etc. Defined by Insta Guides, the way Insta Guides indicated. Jesus, let's keep going here. I'm going to move on here. The 17th. The 17th, three things. This was a huge day as well. I watched Attila Battle Angel, and what a great movie! Holy smoke! I have never this was one of my favorite. I think it's a top 100. It's one of my favorite films. It's a top 80. I think up to 80, 90, something like that. Definitely, I think made the top 100. It was really cool, really well done. The beginning scenes, there's something about it. Amazing and beautiful, you know? And there's this conversation part about it. And imagine for the conversation part about it to be protected, which you guys indicated. But there was almost like a synergy and a contrast regarding it. I apologize greatly. I did not mean to. I wasn't meaning it like that. I'm trying to explain why I liked some of the story. Jesus. Anyway, some of which happens to do with the characters themselves. There was symbolics in regards to my process. It's not new. In fact, there's probably symbolics in regards to other processes. That's probably not new either. With that being said, I'm going to take some vitamins here because I think that's needed to a certain extent. I think that could be decent. I am advocating for my family that these guys need to be protected. These guys need it. I am advocating for let knows in regards to certain things. Okay, so with that being said, what else is there? Okay. One of the themes that day was the sort of morphing, the shaping of the physical at times. Certain kind of beings that have a certain kind of facial expression hanging around. Now, if someone furrows their eyebrows, there's a certain expression that they can make. And it's something that you can perceive there to be a humor there in my eyes, right? I mean, that's there, right? I think to a certain extent. I mean, and then you can see this sort of distraught in my eyes there, right there. You can see it again. Multiple things letting you know that there's more to it behind the scenes. And as a psychic, I've discerned that those energies are spiritual in nature, not just our own expressions doing that, not just what we're portraying and what we're creating by way of our expressions, but or allowing into our process and not so for what's acceptable, but that there is something to that in a certain kind of way. And some of which happens to do with like these elder beings or these big beings that are able to sort of be looking in our process the entire time. And when you get that sort of facial expression, you can almost channel him, and it is sort of shaping our process in a certain kind of way. It's like he's sitting in a certain kind of channel pertaining to certain kinds of processes. And it's one of those things. I don't know what to say on it. What it potentially exists. Yeah, I'm asking for what you guys needed regarding those that you guys needed, the women you guys needed. Let's continue on here. So yeah, I watched. So there's 3 things today, but the key things in regards to it. I don't think it had to do with me watching Alita Battle Angel. I don't think it had to do with me, playing Apex Legends. I don't think it had to do with me going on the ice of Lake Simcoe at night. But on the 17th, and this was after already going on the 16th on the ice, after also doing a certain kind of social media kind of thing, which vindicated me anyway. It's been fairly vindication heavy in regards to February, and it hasn't we haven't been able to get a running head start, and somehow, I'm still sitting there wondering how the hell it is that, I don't feel the live experience half the freaking time. After all this, God, cool, humming and hawing about whatever the heck it was. I mean, they had it, some of them had it under control the entire freaking time. This was the case of this, for freak's sake. For what's acceptable. Yeah, okay, well, that would be for what's acceptable. See, it's not supposed to be so gun heavy there. Holy. Anyway, it's just there's anyway. Well, that would be why. Anyway, I sort of watched this movie, Alita, and it kind of reminded me of spiritually something that had happened called The Fall. And there was a certain kind of setup in regards to it. I'm advocating for that setup to be protected, the way you guys indicated, because I am liable to listen to The Fall again, and probably sometime soon. I don't know why that is that happened in such a good, such a time frame. I feel like I want to watch it now. I mean, that's interesting. Am I going to still want to, well, it's one of those things. You wanting to a motivation. That was another one. This past week, my motivation felt like it got affected. That's for sure. There's this motivation kind of thing that has to do with right on your middle of your forearm at times, and it exists, and I can feel it at times, and it got affected. It's a certain layer to people that they don't fully notice at times. And right now, at times you can feel it, and it's this motivation layer that exists that you can put certain kind of motivation energies into. And that's, it does remind me of that place. It does remind me truly. I freaking forgot about that place. Freaking heck. It's a certain kind though. Why? One's more in front of the scenes. I think the motivation one is supposed to be more in front of the scenes. I think that that's what it was supposed to, or I think that's what it is at times. There was this sort of communication one that I was able to do with my head area, where a certain kind of communication energies and spirits, ventured forth in a certain kind of way, in a certain kind of realm. And I haven't used, I have at times utilized it in a certain kind of way. The last time, not too often though, and I should be. I am looking for that realm, those realms that means you guys needed regarding to be protected. That means you guys needed. It does remind me of the motivation areas. At times, and there is just that sort of thing that happens, and I felt like there is an effect when I touched it there in regards to my back of my neck and things like that. I am advocating for what you guys needed regarding. There's been medical observations at times. On the 10th, there was this sort of thing where I felt a certain kind of other dimensional radiation. I felt that sort of thing. To a certain extent, one of the things that I felt as well this week was motivation being affected in a certain kind of way. Another thing that was being other things too was, I'm asking for clarifications regarding that. I'm asking for reputational defense in regards to those that means you guys needed, the way you guys needed. With that being said, other dimensional stimuli too. It's not the only thing. I felt, head area get expanding consciousness again, but also ones that got hit over the head in a certain kind of way. The 13th was another day where I had watched Outlaw King, and that was another big event. I felt like I was involved in the production of that film in a certain kind of capacity. And it's interesting that when you watch certain films that you're drawn to, there's times where you might be, but I'm not trying to create it by way of saying it. It was just one of those things that I kind of felt might have been. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't know what else to tell you about it. I am advocating for clarifications regarding it. I might not have had anything to do with it at all. In fact, probably not. It's one of those things. But either way, I and others from Mr. Guides are advocating for the cast, crew, etc. from Mr. Guides in regards to Outlaw King. (2018) to be protected the way Mr. Guides needed. And what a great film that was. Really, really good. Yeah, it was very, I don't know why that was. This is because there's a huge battle taking place around me, people, and I don't know what to tell you, but a bit of a storm going on, but not going to happen, I don't think. And that's really it. They got there, and that was the case of it. Well, good for you, Alex. Holy, yeah. Forecasters here. I'm in for the forecasters. That means you guys need to get in the battle announcers. That means you guys need to be protected. That means you guys need to imagine there's a certain kind of people narrating your life as you continue on. There's the narrators. I'm in for the narrators in regards to Alex James Hislop's life. That means you guys need to be protected. That means you guys need to ever was a group to have an advocation in regards to their defense. Friggin' heck. How about, if possible, that would be good. There was an insinuation there. I'm in the insinuation realms. That means you guys need to be protected. That means you guys need to. Anyway, that's one of those communication things. There's a certain kind of insinuation mechanism on top of my head that I converse, not converse, but I sometimes get there's certain insinuations at times. Sometimes I utilize it at times. Sometimes spirit does. With that being said, I'm not meaning to upset anyone. I am trying to just run down the week here. More than a week, technically speaking. A little bit more, about 8 days. 8 days. So, sorry. Let me go over by one. So I in this day on the 17th, there's a reason why there's a huge smoke and mirrors on this one. I don't know what why that, to a certain degree I think I know why. I got attacked spiritually fairly heavily is what was said, and I don't know what to tell people about it, but I don't know what you're expecting, but what it's been, which was basically 3 copies of a diary entry input in regards to it. And it's not too bad, and that's the true. Really, there's barely anything in it. Well, there is. Okay. There barely isn't anything in it, Alex. I felt spiritually attacked. Mentality and perspective attacked. Spirit around me felt a lot of times or insinuated. I'm not trying to hurt myself spiritually. I read 2 disclaimers on the ice and did some key advocations. I also did an advocation when I got back in regards to light and far light. I did verbal advocations out there. That is true. I did verbals. But I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. And the day after they have this screamy and chirpy thing, but I don't understand. I really don't. I mean, it doesn't matter. even if that was real and I was being, well, I get it, disrespectful, not what we want to have happen. They're also trying, at times there's certain spirit that are trying to set up certain things where I'm trying to be disrespectful to certain things, and not even in ways where he's like, where he gets angry and pissed off and says something stupid, but in ways where he just says like, says the wrong thing at the wrong time. Yeah. A little bit at times it's been, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm actually trying to be respectful. I do want there to be respect, especially regarding certain relationships. Difficult when certain people are trying to feng shui it that way. I do apologize. I don't know what to say. I'm not trying to bring this on people. I don't know why you have to respond in certain fashions. I am advocating for what means for guys needed regarding the response. That means for guys needed. The way means for guys needed, because it's been one of the talking points. And it's been, yes, the past 4 or 5 days, a new one that has emerged, people, has been that sort of thing where it's like, something happened to Alex or something happened to someone. You walk in the vicinity and it's just like a bunch of different things happen. It's like, it doesn't matter, Alex. You look up an actor and you're just like, and I think that's sort of the Hollywood game on that. And I don't know if in regards to like, how my process is going to interact with that sort of thing. I think that was a part of it. Not just in regards to Hollywood, but other famous people too, in a certain kind of fashion. I don't really know what that means and why. I know, and I really think I hit it on the head, but people have been saying like, don't hit too much now on the head, but I think I do need to let know of it. It's that sort of thing that some of it I don't think is true. I think some of it is more smoke. I think some of it is smoke and mirrors. At the same time, I think some of it is real in certain kinds of capacity. And I'm wondering if that's there, if the sort of interaction and reaction in regards to certain things, me interacting with a certain process, and all of a sudden there just be this whole thing happening in regards to certain actors and things like that. I get it. There's certain entertainment in regards to that sort of thing, and maybe it's based off of me getting attacked or harmed or someone else or something else happening. It was also said to be tethered in regards to certain actions that had happened in regards to Earth. People who had been attacked before, people who were potentially going to be attacked. So I am having for the let knows, and I've already written this down in multiple forms and have done multiple verbals in multiple kinds of ways, and this should be one that works. And it's that sort of thing that says, I and others, Department Spirit Guides, are advocating for those that means guys indicated not to have to be harmed, etc. Departments for guides in regards to our actions, non-actions, etc. Departments for guides and lives that means guys indicated the way means for guides indicated. This is Alex James Hislop and others Departments for guides saying this. The way means for guides indicated. It really does matter. It's that sort of thing where it's like you remember those people that there was insinuation, some which not so, some which so. It's one of those things that some of which doesn't necessarily have to do with some of it, but some of which might. And I'm not saying that none of it does, because it might. But, at the same time, I don't understand why it was that it was a certain vindication that happened when I went on the ice and I read a certain kind of disclaimer. It was a huge disclaimer, and then the Earth-based content one. And that's the case. Yes, I did an ADHD Earth-based content. I have a disclaimer in regards to it, in a certain kind of way. Well, that's also it. That was also why, Alex. Well, I'm telling you this. I'm advocating for the Guardians in regards to this, Alex James Hislop diary entry, Thursday, February 21st, 2019, to be defended, protected, and healed always the way you guys indicated. There should always be somebody, guarding some of this content because, it really does matter. It wasn't just in regards to this. It matters greatly. And I know some people are like, okay, are you okay? But spiritually speaking, there's sometimes turbulence around me. The viewers out there's turbulence around me at times, and I feel like there is, a certain kind of battle afoot. On top of my head, man, there's something happening, and I don't know what to tell you on it. I'm advocating for the movers, shakers, etc. Guys, in regards to the dimensional existences, that means guys need to receive the prowess in regards to Alex James Hislop's process. That means guys need and others from answer guides, answer guides indicated. Provide by light, power, light, sending light, misleading, etc. From answer guides display the reasonings as to why that should be the way answer guides indicated. I need the light, power, light, sending light to embed what answer guys needed. On this Zoom meeting ID 463-296-396, the way answer guides indicated. Okay. And I need you to do it in the time frames that we guys need. I'm out for time to be protected. I am out for the AGH Earth doing call words to be protected. Those guys in the game. I'm out for the call words that have been protecting me. That means guys need to be protected. The way you guys need to get protected. The way Mr. Guides indicated. Whew. Anyway, let knows in regards to certain things. Yeah. But, when I came back from that day, I went on the ice and I started reading the disclaimers, and I felt myself get attacked. And someone even said, it's like, you've been attacked in a way that you might not have ever been attacked. It was insinuated that way. And of course, it's probably for what's acceptable, but I think he was talking maybe about, Alex James Hislop, February 44, the physical perspective. And that was what they said. They said they attacked me, but then they also said something else later on. And I don't know who it was. I don't know if they attacked the kid. I don't know if they wanted me to say that and to have it maybe thought that that was the case of it. But I don't know fully what happened out there, but I feel like I did get attacked regardless of me getting it protected and saved. That's also it. There is stuff like that, Alex. I mean, this is the case of this. If someone attacks you in the physical, Alex, while you're living down there in your house, you have to defend yourself. You know that? Yes, I understand that. I see that there's things like that. It's the same thing. Same answer, though. And I do like that because it does let me know that, yeah, that was also why. If somebody was to attack me in the physical, in this physical house, spiritually, I might be protecting a certain spot, but not necessarily so. So that lets me know certain things. You know that. All right, then. Whatever, then. And that's why. Because they did say that there was a changing up happening on Earth, and that was the case of this. That was what was let know at times, but I don't know if it's true. And I'm not for the mental systems that you guys needed and mind systems that you guys needed. Not to take the blame in regards to what you guys needed. I am advocating for let knows in regards to it. When you guys needed, I'm also advocating for information let knows in regards to the other systems that you guys needed. The way you guys needed. Well, you don't know why, because Alex remembers. He remembers now. He does. I remember before, but I remember somewhat in a different way now. Something was changed. Yes. Okay, something was, memory-wise. Anyhow, let's continue going here. Well, that would be why. That's the case of this. Because you're sitting up here, and that's the case of it. And that was why. All righty, then I am moving upwards. It's been what it is. I don't know what to tell you. I want to be placed where Mr. Guys indicated. This was the truth of it. For brig's sake. It's not meant like that. Anyway, yeah, I got attacked. I got back. I remember playing, Kingdom Come Deliverance, and I was like sitting there, and there was something happening. There was somebody, they pulled some psych from me. I don't know if they were trying to heal some people through me because there was a healing system on me. So I don't know if it was certain kinds of, Earth or it was. I don't know who got attacked per se. But I am advocating for healing in regards to the events that Major Guys Indicated pertaining to February 17th, 2019, and those that Major Guys Indicated regarding when Major Guys Indicated. I testify in regards to those that Major Guys Indicated pertaining to February 17th, 2019, and it's fairly simple. The way Major Guys Indicated. My testifications, I want to be simple. I don't want them to be complicated. That's how I feel it should be simple. The way Major Guys Indicated. All right, fine. That's how he felt about it. No, you're right. I'm out for thanks to be protected when these guys needed. I'm out for low key to be protected when these guys negated. You don't know why. That's what they said it was. No. I mean, not. Too bad. Well, whatever. Yeah, the 18th. This is where I went to Willow Beach, and it was sort of let know that there was, certain kind of base camp at times in a certain spot. Willow Beach is this place right near me, and I'm out for Willow Beach to be protected. The guides indicated, but it's not necessarily what you think it is. And trust me, they might be, decent in certain kinds of ways. I'm advocating for safeguarding in regards to Willow Beach. That means you guys needed. The way you guys needed. Well, okay. Oh, that was the problem with that, man. I don't know why. I just need to go and check something. All right, so that was why. Holy Jesus. Anyway, I am advocating for what happened there. It was just sort of letting know in this. I think there was some smoke and mirrors happening and some stuff being lost, but at the same time, there was also let knows in regards to certain things. It was a bit of a let know. He was pretty vindicated, too, walking into town. It was right after watching Alita and some of the themes that presented itself. I sort of felt like intelligence and others from Inspirit Guides, needed protecting. I'm advocating for the protectors and defenders in regards to intelligence communities that Miss Guys needed to receive the resources and support that Miss Guys needed in regards to February 18th, 2019. The way Miss Guys needed, I really feel like transparency is decent. That's how I feel about it. I think that that's actually one of the ways that's, that's gonna win this. That's kind of how I feel about it. Anyway, with that being said, I am going with. Very good. Very good. Sorry, it was just there was a duality there, and it's it sounded like a long game to me. Anyhow, all right then. Anyway, I'm advocating for I'm out for the defense that Michigan needed pertaining to February 18, 2019. I went to, right down my street. It was the opposite way. Sometimes I go into town. I went the opposite way. I went to Willow Beach this time instead of Jackson's Point. And I went down with Bogart, and something was going on with Bogart, my dog. I'm out for Bogart to be protected. These guys needed. I'm out for the dogs that these guys needed regarding that day to be protected. These guys needed. There was something that was happening in regards to certain kind of dogs spiritually. I'm out for the hellhounds that these guys needed to be protected. Means you guys needed. With that being said, I am advocating for the dogs that you guys indicated to be protected. Means you guys indicated. Anyway, you don't know why. Well, I'm out for the dogs that makes you guys need to be protected. That makes you guys negated. Right for the trainers that makes you guys need to be protected. That makes you guys negated. Anyway, I went down there and it was just sort of let know about certain movies as I got down there. I was just like, okay, I didn't really think about too much about it. And it was heavily in regards to my family at times. I'm out for my family that makes you guys needed, and others for which you guys to be protected. Makes you guys needed. And it's just to sort of let know these sort of inflections, these facial features at times that I've sort of been talking about and noticing certain kind of expressions that remind me of certain people in certain moments. And I am advocating for the films, the cast, crew, etc. departments for guys and guys to be protected. There's certain creators of the Hollywood at times, and I can't help but wonder if there's some guy like looking around saying, "Where the hell? How the hell? Why don't we get some goddamn resources?" This is the thing of this. It's like it's great to as much as I like to see certain things, there's also something else though, and it's like, wait a second, I'm advocating for the artist's vision that means for guys indicated to be protected. The way means for guys indicated. Holy. Wait, somebody knows what I'm talking about. This is the real truth. We're not saying that. We're not slandering, saying that the protection isn't there. It is a decent in a certain kind of manner, but there is also a certain kind of what the heck is going on. Anyway, that was the 18th. I went over there, and it was again Vindication Day, and it was just more vindication. And that's basically what it was. I spoke and did advocations, a lot of different verbals that day. I met for the frameworks of my outlawed verbals on February 18th. 2019 to be protected the way Mainstream guys indicated. It was decent stuff. Again, I kind of felt like there was certain kind of frameworks that were being utilized in a certain kind of fashion that day. Some of which might be sanctioned, some of which not so. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, maybe that was also it. I mean, some of the earlier people that got targeted and attacked was said potentially some of which to be of Hollywood in a certain kind of fashion. So I am wondering now if that maybe had something, some of which to do with it. That's also it. That would also be why, Alex. And maybe is this the sort of preparation thing I've been doing? I've been advocating for preparation. it's supposed to be going towards what means you guys need to get in. There's multiple situations and things like that, and a lot of different emergency supplies at times being tucked away in ways that shouldn't just be tucking away certain things I didn't necessarily want to have tucked away for what's acceptable. And it does matter greatly because it is still recording here. We're good. So it's the 21st today. It was fairly quiet today. I did have a little bit of there was a little bit of an upsetness in regards to a certain kind of process in regards to my family. I am advocating for my mother that makes guys needed and family that makes guys needed to be protected. They were okay to a certain extent. I'm advocating for the anti-camps to be protected. That makes guys needed the women, makes guys needed. I'm advocating for the resources and support in regards to them that makes guys need to go towards, those that makes guys needed the women, makes guys needed. Journal Vindication was yesterday. That was one of those, again, see, this was the reason. So I go to the 19th, and there was a bit of a, 19th. What was the 19th? Yeah, on my end, it was the light show meeting of Stooges. I remember going to the library, and I remember this moment where I kept seeing lights. It felt like God was around me that day. I looked over to the right side, and I'm at the library, and there's a dude doing light maintenance. He was changing the light bulbs on a certain kind of electronic ladder, and I looked over. I'm reading the Templars, and I kind of felt like there was a bunch of biblical types around me, and I'm like, friggin' heck. I mean, you can't write this shit up. I mean, it really is. And you could just, see some story writer just chilling next to me in a chair, just being like, yeah, so what? For frig's sake. And we're doing decent in a decent way, and this is the truth. There is good stuff. Maybe this one should work, too. It might be. I think so, both. Because it is. It's not meant like that, but it was just meant like, friggin' heck. just to let know. Anyway, I remember the dudes who were changing the lights. That means you guys need in regards to the libraries. That means you guys need to pertain to February 19th, 2019. That means you guys need to be protected. That means you guys needed. It was one of those things where it's like light maintenance. I remember light maintenance to be protected. Means it's indicated. And it's a decent, but it's funny because I was sitting there and I could see these lights like in another dimensional sort of capacity. Like the lights are home, now the lights are home. The lights were home for what's acceptable. I was half expecting to close my eyes and not see the darkness of my mind. Right now, it's a little bit brown. I mean, this is the thing. You see it's a little bit brown instead of black. What does that mean? Okay, that does mean something. I think it does, actually. It's true. Some of which I don't think was good for me, though. It's one of those things where you like hit your head and you see there's times when you can hit your head and you see stars and you're kind of like, you're a little bit dazed. It's a little bit of that stuff happening. So it is affecting me, in a certain kind of peripheral kind of capacity. So I'm wondering if I'm okay. I mean, there is, at times I could feel certain kind of mechanisms being kind of, moved away from me and chakras changing. And I know that it's like, yeah, but that's not going to affect you too bad. But I think some of it does, Anyway, I'm just letting know of it. I know there was to let knows in regards to there's ways to do it. And just because you can't see the light's not on doesn't mean it's not on for what's acceptable. There might be let knows in regards to that too. There was defense systems experiencing life through visuals. Yeah, the people experiencing my life that day. I'm at for what you guys needed regarding it. I'm at for the Sims that means you guys needed. I'm at for those that means you guys needed. The passengers that means you guys needed to be protected. What you guys needed February 19th, 2019. Some of the topics that day: therapeutics, apocalyptics, fantasies, systems to help, hits, earth passings, death, systems, defenses, shields. That means you guys needed. What you guys needed. That was one of the, Started reading The Templars by Michael Hagen. Great friggin' novel. But I could barely get through the. It was one of those things where I had difficulty getting through certain things because of just some of the reaction and interaction. I think in my slow reading didn't help either. I had to reread it a couple of times. I am having for my comprehension and my ability to be protected. These guys need in regards to reading and understanding. The way these guys indicated, it really does matter. I think it's important, and so I'm for the events that are happening today, February 21st, 2019, to be situated the way these guys need. I'm for my defense to be protected the way Mr. Guides indicated. I'm for what means guys need regarding those. What means guys need the way means guys need. I'm for God to be protected the way guys need on the 20th. Kind of felt like everybody was kind of trying to blame God, a little bit to a certain degree. It was Journal Vindication Day. It was that sort of thing where I was writing down my diary entries, and it was just like this thought for me, a realization, real blooming realization, where it's like, holy smoke, wait a second, I'm writing this stuff down like 3 times in the digital. I have it written down, unwritten, with pencil, once, and the theme's written down a second time in a ledger. And then I also have these freaking videos that I'm doing, which is letting know a rundown of it all over again. Different kinds of angles too, which is decent. It really is one of those things where it was like we realized that and it was like, okay, yeah, that was pretty much it. And and I don't think that the anti-chems deserve to take the blame for this. It's just one of those things that we realized, and it might not be necessarily what you think it is. This might be a little bit of a trap in the mix, to a certain extent. Okay, well, it's just to let know. Anyhow, I mean, it's one of those things that maybe if you weren't, the shit there, then, maybe you weren't the shit there, There is a thing like that. It's like, you're at a certain battle, and it's like, yeah, why the heck wasn't that one? It's like, you weren't there, man. Like, geez, it really is. You're like, wait till you see what it was. All right, well, that'd be why. I mean, half the people didn't even freaking remember some of this stuff for what's acceptable in regards to the battle that made you guys indicated. Some people didn't even know what the hell battle that was. They're like, what the heck? We'll get that here. That's the problem with it. That would be why, Alex. Holy. All right. You win. What was the means for guys indicated, man? Okay. So yeah, it was one of those days, and yeah, there's been a lot of that talk about life stealing too. It's that sort of thing as well. I did a huge permissional thing yesterday, and I kind of expanded upon it today, and did huge disclaimers, some of which had to do with certain kind of stacking system where certain kind of spirits stack certain kind of actions, like you've had a really good life, all these good lives, like how do you not deserve to get attacked? It's like, I don't deserve to get attacked just because I live really decent lives. It's like some people think you do. I'm like, okay, well, but there's also the good kind too, which is like, you haven't had a decent life in a while, Alex. Holy frig, what the heck's that mean, huh? It's like, you deserve to get a good life. It's like that kind of stacking stuff can be decent, no matter the stacking systems that we guys need, as well as one of the other systems that we guys needed, and the non-greedy systems that my main spirit guides indicated in regards to those that my main spirit guides indicated to be protected, defended, and healed. This was etc. Defined main spirit guides. So main spirit guides indicated there's many different ways of playing the game and the non-game, things like that. But yeah, it was. Yeah, it was different kinds of stacking disclaimers is what I created, as well as stacking advocations. I left it up all night, and it friggin' situated. It helped, and it was decent. I'm out for big square, little square, meta square, wing square, etc. to find main square guys to do what main square guys needed in regards to the stacking that main square guys needed, the way main square guys needed. I'm advocating for the games that main square guys needed to receive the technology and defense that main square guys needed. I'm advocating the technological masters that main square guys needed to be protected, the way main square guys needed. There was other things too. It was this permissional let know in regards to certain things. I took a look at certain things, and I was like, I remember watching Narcos a bit, and I am at for cast crew etc. performance guides in regards to Narcos. (2015) to be protected, defended, healed. This was etc. performance guides. My main guys needed. And it was one of those things where I remember sitting there. I don't know if it was sitting there watching, but there's been these themes when I've been writing down diary entries and doing certain things here and there when having it on the background, and it doesn't have too much to do with it, but it does remind me of certain kind of things that have happened to a certain extent. And one of which I don't know if it has actually anything to do with it. Maybe it was a good advocation nonetheless because I have been sort of pulling from certain content experiences, but I am aiming for content experience creation in regards to some of that stuff. That makes sense, especially when I watch some of it. I do have content experience creation, documents in the living room, on the coffee table, which is where I was working too, where I was listening to it. Either way, though, one of the things in regards to it was that sort of thing. I looked at it and I'm like, okay, so what exactly is it that's, being attached to some of my actions, and how is it that we can do this in a safe way where some don't necessarily have to rely upon my actions to such a degree? We looked at it and sort of said, okay, so if I do an advocation and there's like this like wave ripple effect of decency, what's a certain way that we can do it so they don't necessarily have to rely upon me having to do certain kinds of advocations, and it just, that some of them can just do it in a certain kind of fashion, which would free up certain things. And then later on, we don't necessarily have to worry about when Alex James Hislop passes and his physical presence being as much of an impact as it might be when he passes on, that sort of thing. And we did it in a certain fashion. We didn't do it too, I think, drastically or erratic. So that's we were doing this subtle. I think we went the subtle kind of route. We did it was a subtle bump, and not necessarily, it was there. But there is something there to a certain extent. I'm advocating for clarifications in regards to myself, especially in regards to appropriation that makes us needed, when makes us needed. I and other assurance guides are advocating for let knows in regards to it. I'm advocating for intimacy disclaimers to be displayed where makes us needed in the moments that makes us needed, the way makes us needed. I'm advocating for intimacy, creation, in regards to Alex James Hislop and other assurance guides. The way guys in regards to the the moments that we discussing. Sometimes there is intimacy energies that happen in regards to when you pursue intimacy. Sometimes there's content experience energies that are created in regards to when you watch film and other experiences. In regards to people who impact the world around them in a heavy way, and at times they've said that I have impacted the world in a certain kind of spiritual sense sometimes. So this is let know in regards to it. That's why it's so big, and that's why it mattered greatly, though. That's why wouldn't it be? Especially if you take a look at what happened if Alex James Hislop was to pass, maybe before and after this, it's a little bit more. And of course, but you look at it in the moments that Mitch guys indicated. In life, our late sending Mitch guys indicated. Look at the reasons why you should display that information that Mitch guys indicated pertaining to it, the way Mitch guys indicated. And you make a decision. Whatever. Then that was the thing of this. You don't know why, because that's why. All right. Anyway, guys, things are a little tense right now. Spiritually, it is. Anyway. You don't know why that is, why it all goes that way, because that's the case of this now. That was why. You don't know why it is. Certain things don't let up, Alex, and you don't know why. Well, one of these days we'll be saved in regards to it. You don't know why that is. No, what? No, of course we do. Oh, no. See, now that was the thing of this. Alex looked at it from the other dimensional perspective. And in that sense, he is correct. And on this run, we kind of agree. I'm sorry, but no, nowhere nears. God, I need that God right at the end there. Come on. That was the thing of it. That God right at the end there. There we go. All right, because there's a bit of Earth. They brought it to I might have Earth to be protected. These guys indicated. I might have a solar system to be protected. These guys indicated. For Christ's sake. I might have Neptune especially to be protected. These guys indicated. Neptune is decent. He doesn't deserve to be attacked at all. I think Earth agrees. These guys indicated. Whatever. Anyway, some of the themes today, I felt like the certain kind of society, you know what, maybe I'm out of the themes that makes you guys need the rest of February 20th, 2019 and February 21st, 2019. That makes you guys need to be protected. Those guys needed. I think I'm going to call it here, but yeah, I mean, that's basically been the let know. It's been fairly vindication heavy. If we can ease into a certain kind of spot where, I don't know, if I still need to be able to talk about certain things, it's something that's decent. And, I'm not even for the let knows in regards to what you guys needed, the way you guys needed. I still do certain videos, man. This was a let know to get certain things out of the way, just supposed to certain help, and it's not meant to get angry in regards to certain things. It is meant to say this stuff needed to be told to a certain extent, obviously, in a certain kind of fashion. I mean, this is the truth of it. And just because there's a certain kind of outburst or a certain kind of thing that happens doesn't necessarily mean that's the case of it, but to a certain extent it can, I think, in a certain kind of way for what's acceptable. If you take a look at the reasonings as to why you don't need to work against Alex James Hislop and others from Instagram, guys, I think that's one of the key points that shouldn't be lost here. Light, far light, sending them guys again, like doing what these guys needed regarding what they indicated for you to do pertaining to this market identification, etc. from Mr. Guys, and display Alex James Hislop's defense and others from Mr. Guys' defense, where Mr. Guys indicated, when Mr. Guys indicated, the way Mr. Guys indicated.